sometimes I go to parties with lots of other storytellers. And what we do is we all bring food and we have like a potluck supper. Then we sit around and we tell stories. It was at a couple of these parties last summer that I met my guest, Gery Hallgrimson. I got to bring her to a couple of dinner parties, and I heard her tell 2 different stories. And one of them particularly really captivated me, and I said, Gery, I want you to come on my TV show and tell that Eskimo legend. So here is Gery Hallgrimson to tell you that very story.
Come, said the grandmother to her grandchildren. Come, it's cold tonight. Let us come inside and sit around the seal oil lamp. And I will tell you a story that happened right here in our own village when my grandmother was a little girl. Well, there wasn't any village school in, and there wasn't any store. No place to buy canned peaches or flour or pretty cloth to cover the parkas. No, no schools. No one could read or write. But the fathers taught their sons how to build the sleds and how to build the umiaks, a large ocean-going canoe, so they could go out and hunt whales. And how to respect the animals that offer themselves to be killed, that they may live and have clothes. And always to return a bit of every animal to the sea, that the Yanuas can make more animals. And to always keep the laws of the people. And the mothers taught the girls all they needed to know. How to prepare the skins, how to make the clothing, and sew those seams so tight that no water and cold can get in. And to hunt the berries and greens in the summer and collect them enough so there'd be some for winter. And also to fish and to dry the fish. Also to respect the animals and the birds. And to keep all the laws of the people. Now the houses they lived in were different too then. They were round and part under the ground and part above the ground. Under the ground partly for the warmth of the earth. And the tops were made of driftwood and whalebone and layers of turf. One layer of turf with the grass side down and the other layer of turf with the grass side up. And when it was finished, it looked like a little mound with grass growing on it in the summer with flowers growing on those mounds. And of course there was an entrance way, and on top there was a smoke hole, and the smoke hole was covered with a seal gut skin in winter, and just enough of it would be let open till it smoke out. When it was bitter cold, so the snow didn't come down in, and so it kept it a little bit warmer. Well, that's what the houses were like then. And there were children in most of them, children who laughed and played, and you could hear the joy of the children. Except in one house, there was no child. And the couple dearly wanted children. Oh, they wanted children. The woman longed to have a baby to carry in her pockethood. And the man longed to have a son to teach him all the things he knew. So they asked their neighbors. And the neighbors said, well, I just have to wait and hope. Then they asked the shaman, and the shaman came and danced his strongest dance, and when he fell down exhausted, he said, well, you're just going to have to wait and hope. So I waited, and I hoped. Then one day, the woman knew she was going to have a baby. She felt that first sign of life, and she knew. And she was so happy. She sang all day long. And the man, when he went out hunting the seals, he nearly skipped and danced across the ice, and he said, listen, you seals, listen. There's going to be a child in our house, a child to laugh and to play. And oh, I will teach him so many things. Oh, Seals, there's going to be a child in our house. And so they waited for the child to be born. And when he was born, it was a beautiful boy. And they were so happy. He was a very good baby, and they were so happy. And then one day, the father was playing with the baby, and he took his hand and put it near the baby's face. The baby didn't even blink. Then he said, bring something the baby really likes. The mother brought something, and the baby just looked the other way and smiled. Then they knew their beautiful child was blind. They also knew what the law of the people was in those times, that no one who couldn't grow up to hunt would be allowed to live, to grow up to live. So the mother was really heartbroken that her beautiful child was blind. Then she said, oh, maybe he wasn't finished when he was born, and he'll get his eyesight as he grows up. And he was such a good child. They nearly forgot he was blind. He could do so many things. He could play with the children and do many things. And he was really quite a favorite with the children. Not having eyesight, he had a wonderful imagination. And he could tell such grand stories. Well, he could do many of their games. And one of the games they played when the ice was breaking up was of jumping from one ice floe to another ice floe. He would have the other child's hand, and they would run, and they would jump, just like a sighted child. Well, the year, they called their boy Alugwa, and the year that he turned 7 years old, the winter was very hard. They didn't have very much food. And one night, Alugwa was going to his sleeping place, and he felt among the furs, as he always did, there was a sleeping place, or you could sit there, but mostly people sat on the floor, and the seal oil lamp was in the middle. So he went to a sleeping place one night, and he felt, oh, what's that? And they reached in it, and he felt, it was a little mouse. So he held that little mouse all night, so he wouldn't roll over on it and kill it. The next morning, they had very little breakfast, but he gave the mouse a little of his. Well, the mother and father, they knew in their hearts the law of the people. Alugwa was 7, and everyone knew he was blind. So when the neighbors came and said to them, when we go to the fish camp, you must harden your heart and leave Alugwa behind to die. The spring cold is kind, and he will feel warm, and then he will fall asleep forever. The mother couldn't be consoled. She just couldn't be consoled. But she knew it was the law of the people. She finally told Alugwa, and Alugwa also knew that was the law of the people. Came the day when they moved to the fish camp. All the children were laughing and jumping and going away. There's still snow on the ground around their house. And his mother held him one last time and told him to be brave and to remember the spirits are kind to little children. And then she left, and she stuffed up the entrance, and the father covered the smoke hole with just a tiny crack for the smoke to get out. But before the mother left, she secretly took the last of the seal oil she had, and she put it in the seal oil lamp. She said to herself, at least for a little while, Alugwa will be warm. And then he heard the footsteps. He heard all the people leave. Then he heard these 2 sets of footsteps leaving, slowly, slowly, and then they stopped. Oh, maybe they're coming back for me. Maybe they've changed their mind. And then those footsteps went on and got fainter and fainter, and all he could hear was the sad song of the wind. He cried a little bit, but he wasn't used to feeling sorry for himself. And he told him out loud himself the stories that he knew. And then he sang songs that he knew. Then he was hungry, and his mother told him that she left a little food by the seal oil lamp. So he fell down by the seal oil lamp and had some food. And then he went to his sleeping place and slept. And when he woke up, he thought he'd only slept a little while because the house was still warm. But he was very hungry, so he fell down there by the seal oil lamp and he had some food. And then he played games. He played the games he knew. And one little game he knew so well was the one with sticks and stones. You have a lot of sticks, you have a stone, you throw the stone up, and you got as many sticks as you can and catch the stone again. He was very good at that. And he began telling himself stories and singing the songs he knew. And then the awful aloneness came over him, and he began to cry. Then he heard from the entranceway a little sound. First he was a little bit scared, but he stopped crying to see what it was, hear what it was. And he heard this voice, "Alokwa, why were you crying?" "Oh, I was crying because I'm blind and I'm left alone to die, because I cannot learn to hunt when I grow up." "But Alokwa, you're not going to die. You're going to grow up to be one of the most famous men in the village." "Who are you?" "Do you remember the little mouse that you kept safely all one night in the winter?" "Yes." "That mouse was my child. I am Mouse Woman, and my people are going to bring you food and water, and you are not going to die, Alokwa. Feel down there by the seal oil lamp." And there was fresh water and there was food. Every day the mouse people came. They brought him food. And you must remember, in the summertime, it's a very, very busy time for the mouse people, because they must gather all the seeds and things they can and bring them into their burrows to feed themselves all winter long. But some of them came every day, brought food, water. Not only that, they told them their stories. They told them about the sky magic and the magic under the ground. Told them stories of the mice. There was one little mouse who was so little, they just called him Little One. And they kind of looked down on him because he didn't grow as big as the others. But he was the one who gave the alarm when the hour came to their burrow. Everybody was saved because he squeaked the alarm. Then he told them about Raven and Raven stories. Raven is the creator god. Now one day Raven was like a big black crow, only bigger. Raven was walking on the earth of his creation. He walked down to a marshy place, and there was growing some northern cotton, and he picked 2 balls of this cotton, and he blew on them, and they became the first mice. He said, "Oh, what pretty creatures you are. I want you to live in the ground and have many children and eat seeds and grass and not harm anyone." And that's how it was, and that's how it is. So they told him many stories, and they showed him his dances, their dances too. On the back of his hand, the mouse people did their dance so he could feel the beauty of their dance. Then Mouse Woman said, "The animals have a gift for you. This is a gift from the animals, and you must not tell anyone where you got it, and you must not let anybody hear you when you sing it. It's a magic hunting song, and it is a gift of the animals." And so she sang it. She sang it and she sang it until Alokwa could sing it himself. And the song goes, "I am Alokwa, the blind one. Come to my knife and spear that I may live. And I will make songs for you. I will make dances for you. And I will tell all the people how brave you were, how beautiful you were in the water." And then came the day. Mouse Woman came and said, we have had the first frost today, and your people will return this evening. Now you must not tell them who helped you. And you must promise never to let anyone hear your hunting song. And so the mouse people left. Well, Alugwa cried a little bit because he'd really gotten to love the mouse people. And he listened to those little voices, and he just really loved them. And after they were gone, he just waited and waited. And he knew all the people would be coming back, and his parents would be coming back. So when he could hear the children coming first, and then the other people and the dogs, then there were two sets of very slow footsteps coming. Now, when the mother and father came back to their little house, the father went to take the cover off the smoke hole, and the mother to take the things out of the entranceway. And just as the mother got all the things out of the entranceway, the father got up there and got the cover off, and the slide came down inside. And the mother, who was dreading what she was going to see, her son dead from cold and starvation, there he was, sitting there, alive and well. And she just cried. And when the father came down, he also reached, and he cried too. Then they brought Alugwa outside so everybody could see him. And the mother said, "But Alugwa, how did you stay alive so long?" He said, "Oh, Mother, the food you left for me lasted a long time." So then the people knew some magic had kept Alugwa alive. And that magic must be honored. So they allowed him to grow up, so he could run and play with the other children again. And so Alugwa grew up, and when he was almost a man, about 16, he said to his father, "Father, let me come with you in Umiak. Let me come and hunt with you." "Oh, no, you're blind. You would just get in the way." "Oh, Father, I know I would get away. Oh, please let me come with you." So he pestered and he pestered, and finally the father, who was the captain of the Umiak, said to the other men, "Do you think we could let my son come just once?" And the men said, "Well, if you'll sit in one place and be still, we'll let him come once." So Alugwa was allowed to go into the Umiak and go out on a whale hunt. He sat quite still for a long time, and he was singing quietly his song. Then he said, "Let me stand in the prow. Let me have the spear." And I said, "Oh, no, you couldn't see what to spear." And then he passed it and he passed it. And finally he said, "All right, we'll let him have a chance to stand in the prow and give him a spear." And he stood there and he sang his little song to himself. "I am Alugwa, the blind one. Come to my knife and spear that I may live. And I will make songs for you. I will make dances for you and tell all the people how brave you were, how beautiful you were in the water." Just then, a whale swam by, and the men shouted, "Dart it! Dart it!" Alugwa said, "It's the wrong one." And then the ice began to crowd in, and they had to take the Umiak, which is made out of skins and driftwood and whalebone. They had to take it out of the water so it wouldn't get crushed with the ice. So then Alugwa was standing on the edge of the ice, singing his little magic hunting song. A whale swam by, and the men came, "Dart it! Dart it!" And Alugwa said, "It's the wrong one." Well, Alugwa said, "I can hear them singing in the water." And the men said, "Oh, he just hears the ice crowding." But suddenly Alugwa beckoned them to come forward. And just then, a whale breached right in front of him, and he darted it. And of course, all the rope paid out, and all the men helped to bring in this whale. Now, when they were towing this whale back to their village, the people in the village could see this little boat and this big whale coming along. And they all ran down on the shore ice, and they were laughing and singing They knew there was going to be enough food for this winter. And everybody helped haul the whale up on the shore ice. Well, the men were so excited. It's a Lucas whale, it's a Lucas whale. He dotted it. He was so excited. And it was such a great day for Alugua and his parents. Well, that year, Alugua caught 3 more whales. And the next year, he also caught 4 whales. He became a very famous hunter. And now, when he told stories, lots of people came around to hear his stories. And he grew up, and he married a lovely maiden from the next village, and they had many children. And he grew up to be one of the wise old men of the village. And that was when my grandmother was a little girl.
That was quite a story. Could you tell us some of the experiences that you've had
With
telling it before?
All right. For me, it means it's a great Thanksgiving story. Something doesn't happen that was supposed to happen. Do you know what it was? Alugua stayed alive, right? Well, the first time I told this story, it was to my family and all the cousins and aunts and everybody. And I didn't know it, but my brother had brought a blind student. And I didn't know until after I told the story, and she stood up at the table and said, "That was told just for me. I know it was just told for me." She hadn't been blind all her life, but since she was 12, and she'd had to make her way since then and made a life, a creative life for herself. And she had done that. And there was a brother who felt the story. He was handicapped, and he felt the story gave him something too, something that made him stronger. And it's been, and some people feel that it's a story about a mother having to give her child, you know, to almost certain death, and to come back and have that child again. And then some people, some of the children, last week the children identified with Alugua. And when people went away and left him, how brave he was. That's what the children thought. Oh, what a brave boy he was. He only cried a little bit because he wasn't used to feeling sorry for himself. And that's the part that some of the children have identified with Alugua, how brave he was. Imagine jumping from one ice floe to another and not seeing how much water is between one and the other, and trusting your friend completely.
There's so much in that. It's you learn, in the first place, you learn a lot about how that particular tribe lived. She really described everything they ate and what their house was like. And that, but it's not just specifically about the Eskimo.
No.
But it's about everybody who has some sort of a handicap like that.
Yeah.
When you tell this in as part of the curriculums, you have trained for schools where they do nothing but tell stories. Well, not quite, but they do a lot of stories.
Oh, yes, yes.
Where does this fit? In what grade do they usually tell?
Oh, in a Waldorf school, there's stories right from kindergarten. They learn even first, second, third, fourth, and fifth grades out of stories. Yes, they learn history out of stories. They learn geography from stories. And it's a wonderful, wonderful way to learn. And the children have the same story, the younger children, the same story at least 3 times. And once you've told a long story 3 times, I want them to know it well enough so they can take it into sleep, so they can go to sleep telling themselves a story that they really, really like. And that's a wonderful thing. One time I was telling a story like that, was doing it, I think, the second time, and there was a new child in class, and the new child said, but you told that story yesterday. And one of the kids took her hat from her desk and said, and she's going to tell it again today, too, the same one. Because they get to the favorite parts and get to really know it. And learn a lot of things from stories.
Kids sure like to hear the same story again and again.
They do.
It's just today I was telling stories both to 4th grade and to 1st grade, and everybody asked for the same story that they'd heard before.
Oh.
So sometimes I did it, sometimes I didn't. Mm-hmm. But you don't mind if I tell like Baba Yaga a couple of times.
Oh, I love Baba Yaga.
You know Baba Yaga too?
Yeah.
There was a part in this story that reminded me of the little mouse.
Yeah.
Because that's when there are animals that act in just a really enchanting way, like a little mouse that talks to you and gives you hope and tells you what to do. It's just, because mice would never do that. They'd always run away from you. And it's just so exciting. And I have another story where a rabbit comes out of the woods and just jumps into a man's arms and wants to be there, to be safe. And wouldn't you really like to have that? Talking to the animals is something that's kind of like a universal wish that we would all like to know what they're saying. Well, thank you so much for that marvelous Eskimo legend. And now you can understand how the people of the North lived a little bit better. Thank you.